I'd say that how good this card is will definitely depend on your deck. But if you're already in humans, this is probably a solid B. Um, if you're already in humans, this is probably a solid B. Let's think about the odds. Let's suppose you have this card and 8 other humans in your deck, right? And let's suppose there's 8 other humans in your deck. Let's consider that your hand likely contains one of those other 8. So let's suppose there's 7 left in the deck. So let's say you're casting this on turn 4. So let's suppose, for simplicity, there's 30 cards left in your deck, and there are, yeah, so 37. So each card has roughly a 1 in 4 chance. So 0.75. What's 0.75 to the 4th? Let's 0.75 to the 4th, roughly. We're guesstimating here. 0.75 to the 4th. That is the odds that you fail, right? Yes. So, yeah, if you have 7 other humans in your deck, or 7 other humans in your deck when you cast this, you have about a 70% chance of hitting. That's pretty good. That's almost as good as drawing a card in that case. So with that in mind, I really like this card. Once you do the math, it seems like it's pretty powerful. Again, I guesstimated a little bit, but you could have 6 more, you could have 10 more. I think this card is going to be nice. Let's call it like a B minus, maybe a B. I don't know. It's great in humans, mediocre otherwise. But yeah, nice card. I like it. Let's keep going. It's at least a B plus if you're superhuman. Well, if you're superhuman, every card's B plus, right? Kappa. Anyways, Dawn Griff, 2/2 for 3 mana. That was a horrible pun, or a horrible joke. It's a common, so you're going to be seeing a lot of these. 2/2 flyers for 3 mana have always been pretty good. The question is, how much support is there for this archetype, right? Because 2/2 flyers for 3 mana are fantastic, but if your opponent's playing 3/3s for 3, it doesn't really hold up. So the question is, can you deal with your opponent's ground game? And the second question is, how powerful are flyers in this format? Because if a 2/2 flyer is if flying basically has unblockable on it, this is going to be a really good card. I don't know how many reach creatures there are. I don't know how many other flyers there are in colors that aren't white. I know that blue has quite a few. But this is probably kind of close to unblockable. So I'm saying this is probably a C. Maybe a C, C+. Like, you're going to play these. You're going to be happy to play them. Let's just call it C. But I don't think it's, like, super exciting. Probably not a super high pick. So that's probably where Dawn Griff belongs. Next, deploy the Gatewatch. Deploy the Gatewatch is 4 white for a sorcery at Mythic. So what does it say? This better be good, right? Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put up to 2 Planeswalk. Oh. Womp womp. This is an F. Even if you have 2 Planeswalkers in your deck, I don't think you play this card in Limited. That's how bad this is. So let's just keep going. Desperate Sentry, 2 white. Creature. Okay, so 2 white for a 1/2. So this better have good text. When it dies, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token onto the battlefield. That's actually not bad. I actually like this because as a 1/2, it'll trade with some things out there, and when it dies, you get a 3/2. Now, this isn't a super good card for beatdown decks. And I'm kind of ignoring the rest of the text, by the way. I'm ignoring the +3/+0 for Delirium at the moment. If you're not in Delirium and you're not in a Dirtily deck, this card probably isn't for you. or rather, if you're not in a mid range. So if you're playing an aggro white red deck, I'm not sure you want to play this. You might, but I don't know. Because this doesn't do much on the turn it comes down. Yeah, Bugsy, I was about to get to that. But in most limited decks, which aren't like dedicated aggro, this is going to be a good card. Because the vast majority of... Yeah, he's using the Lammas bait. The vast majority of limited decks end up being kind of mid-rangey. And this is a really nice card in mid-range because it can trade with some things or combo block with like a 2/2 to block a 4/3, right? And then you get a 3/2 back, which, you know, that's pretty good. If you're paying 3 mana for a 3/2, that's fine. So the fact that it dies as a 1/2 first is pretty cool. There's a few other synergies with this card because if you want creatures going to the graveyard for whatever reason, like let's say you're playing a deck with Delirium, not, you know, this isn't bad because it goes to the yard and you get a 3/2. If you're sacking it for whatever reason, right? There's a few cards in black that you sack a creature and destroy a creature. You know, this is pretty good for that. This makes Merciless Resolve better. So maybe black-white is like the home for this card. Not sure. And yeah, the Delirium is pretty cool too. Do note that there are a bunch of cards that say Emerge on them. And let me just pull up one. Here's a card with Emerge on it. There aren't any in white. So you would have to be pairing white with either black, blue, or green to really use that as Emerge fodder. But, you know, that's 75% of the color combos for white out there. So that's, you know, pretty likely. But yeah, you paid 3 mana for the, what's it called? The Desperate Sentry, right? And then the next turn, you play a land, play Swamp, and then play Abundant Maw, sacrificing your guy, getting a 3/2, draining them for 3, and getting a 6/4. That's a pretty fucking good play. So, yeah. That's probably the best deck for Desperate Sentry. With all that in mind, how do we rate this thing? Because this is like, it's decent on its own, but it's really the synergies that put this on top, right? Gosh, where should we put this? I kind of like this at C+, maybe B-. I don't think we know yet enough about the format to call it a B-, but I think this is a C+. Great value, especially with Emerge. Like, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of good cards to go with this. And Bugsy, I'm not even sure I'd call it a build around, right? Because it's just solid on its own. Like, on its own, it brings you 4/4 in stats for 3 mana. Now, granted, you don't get them at the same time, but that's a lot, right? So, I kind of like this. Let's keep going. I like that card, though. I think I'm going to be picking that a lot. Drogskol Shieldmate. It's an uncommon 2/3 flash. Already playable-ish, considering it's a spirit. And then when it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +0/+1. Ooh, so this is a good flash, a decent flash creature with a bad combat trick rolled into one card. So you're probably going to be able to get some value out of this. Like a 2/3 flash will be able to eat a lot of 2 mana creatures attacking on turn 2. And it's going to be a little easier to pass with your mana up. Because there's going to be less werewolves in the format. There's going to be many fewer occasions where you play, or far fewer occasions, where you have to play against a Hinterland Logger on turn 2. And so you're going to be able to let them play their 2-drop, maybe attack with your 2-drop, they don't block, and then play the Drogskol Shieldmate and ambush their guy pretty often, I think. So I like it. This is fine. I think this is probably like a C+ or B-. This definitely gets better in spirits, and there are quite a few good spirits in this format, especially in blue. Spirits seem to have taken the place of angels in Innistrad. Kind of interesting. But yeah, let's figure out where to rate this. I kind of like this as a B-. Whoops, not B-, B, just B-. Let's call it great, good. Let's say good stats, and you can probably get another card out of the deal, out of the trick part of the card. Yeah, solid, good curve filler too. Next, Extricator of Sin, which flips, by the way, into Extricator of Flesh. So let's look at the first card. When Extricator of Sin enters the battlefield, you may sack another permanent, so it can't sack itself. If you do, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi Horror creature token onto the battlefield. One thing to note, there are a lot of 3/2s in this format. I've just been seeing tons and tons and tons of 3/2s. So the fact that it's an 0/3 on its own isn't too exciting. Like 0/3 isn't a very good set of stats. Like I'd love to have an 0/4. Like if this was an 0/4, holy crap, this would be freaking amazing, right? It'd just be really, really good. 0/3 is fine, but not exciting. The fact that you can sack another permanent, you know, sometimes you'll sack something that has been borrowed graced, right? And that's pretty nice. But other times you're not going to want to do that. Now, where this really belongs is in that Eldrazi deck. Again, with cards like Abundant Maw. If you play that on turn 2, or turn 3, right? If you play the Extricator of Sin on turn 3, and then you sack it to Abundant Maw, you know, that's not terrible. Actually, wait a second. Oh, I can't sack... Duh. Never mind, I'm dumb. I'm thinking of the other card still. Man, that Desperate Sentry is looking better and better and better. Huh. Where should we rate this? This isn't as good as I thought it was. Now, I guess the Delirium bit is pretty sweet. Because once you flip it, let's look at that other side. Because it is worth looking at. And then Eldrazi you control have Vigilance. You could sack a non-Eldrazi creature, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi Horror token onto the field. Like, that's a good card for 3 mana. It does help Delirium eating a land. Yeah, that's true. This card is hard to evaluate. There's a lot of synergy involved here. Because as a turn 3 play, if you're getting beat down, this is not very good, frankly. But as a turn 5 play, this starts looking a lot more appealing. So if you think of Extricator of Sin as like a 5-drop or a 6-drop in a Delirium deck that, you know, costs 3 mana, like kind of a late game play, this isn't too bad because, you know, if you have a bunch of 1/1s, this can help out with that because it can sack your 1/1s and you get 3/2s. Or you could sack your 2/2 zombie and get a 3/2 Eldrazi. Or you can basically blank your opponent's removal in a lot of cases. I kind of like this. But I think you have to think of it as a more of a late game play than a turn 3 play because it's not really a turn 3 play. So how shall I rate this card? Gosh, I think it's like a B-, more of a late game play, also good with expendable permanents. Helps with Delirium, but not something you want to play on turn 3 usually. Yeah, interesting card. Not sure how it's gonna fare, but I like it. Okay, Faith Unbroken, 3 and a white. Enchant creature you control. And it's an so it's an enchantment for 4 mana. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Faith Unbroken leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. Wow. Oh, man. So this is like... This is an all-in Oblivion Ring. That's kind of how I see this. This card is powerful, but also really, really swingy. Because if you... Oh, God. Like, if you remove... Like, when you play this, you're immediately very far ahead. But if your guy gets removed, you're immediately very far behind. Wow. This is a card that I think I'm going to include in most of my decks if I have it. But it's not as good as it looks, I think. Because if your opponent has removal, kind of get fucked. in a lot of ways because it pairs the weaknesses of enchantment of